Growing up, I knew my parents were there for me. We celebrated family events. They were there for me when I was sick or needed help. As me and my sister grew up, we knew we could count on our parents. We were so proud to be their children. Today, we are there for our parents, to share in the celebration of their grandchildren or to be there when they are ill or need assistance. They can count on us. And now our parents look to us to take care of them. Hello and welcome to Always There. I'm Michael Wilsker and I'll be your host. I'm owner of an elder care agency called Always Best Care Senior Services, which provides non-medical in-home care and free assisted living and independent living placement. Today our guest is Susie Casper. She's going to be speaking about long-term care insurance. And before I discuss the topic with you, if you have any questions regarding any of the material that we've discussed on this show or any of the prior shows, please feel free to email me with your questions to alwaysthere@westborotv.org. So welcome, Susie.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Oh, and Susie, just give us the name of your company and a little bit about your background.
Sure. I am the owner of Casper Long-Term Care Planning. We are long-term care insurance specialists and have specialized in long-term care insurance for 11 years. So we help people when they decide they want to put a plan in place to cover long-term care services when their health changes. And then we help people go on claim when they actually do need long-term care.
And where are you located?
We work out of Dover, Massachusetts, but we can service any place in the United States.
And what was your experience before you became, what did you do before you became a long-term care specialist?
Well, my background is finance and accounting. I worked for GE right out of college, went through their financial management training program, was a corporate auditor, and then I stayed home for 14 years as I raised my 3 sons. And when it was time to go back to work, I saw this opportunity, and it seemed like it made sense for me.
And what made sense for you? What was the part of the long-term care insurance that got your attention?
Well, I have a personal story, like everybody does. My husband's sister was in a boating accident when she was 30, and she has an acquired brain injury because she was underwater for 15 minutes before she was rescued. So she has been living with our family members, my husband's sister, and she lives with us about a month every year. So we live the ultimate long-term care story. So I'm very passionate about long-term care insurance and how planning can make a difference and take some of the burden off family members.
So how old was she when she...
30.
30.
She's 60 today,
She's
61.
60. And she qualified for long-term care insurance
Well, no,
30.
she couldn't buy it because she didn't buy it when she was 29.
Right.
You can't buy long-term care insurance when you have a health issue. You have to buy it when you're healthy.
Is that across the board if you have any health issues before, or is there certain kinds of health issues that would eliminate you
The
from
things
getting
that would
policy?
eliminate you from getting long-term care insurance are chronic conditions. So if you have Parkinson's, or you have MS, or you have Lou Gehrig's disease, or you already have memory issues, or you have a combination of diabetes and heart disease, or you have chronic arthritis or pain where you're taking narcotics, those conditions you couldn't qualify to buy long-term care insurance.
And as we know, sleep apnea.
If you aren't compliant with the CPAP,
Right,
you
right,
cannot get it if
right.
you have sleep apnea.
Because we've had that experience because we were going to
Yes.
get long-term care insurance through you.
Yes.
And my wife is in great shape, but not so for me.
So to that point, I always say to people, buy long-term care insurance when you're young and healthy. The best time to buy it is actually in your 40s, although it's not on the radar screen for a lot of people in their 40s. You can get it up to age 80 if you have good health, but it's better to buy it in your 40s and 50s. It's a lot less expensive too.
And just give to the audience a general description of what long-term care insurance is and what it covers.
Sure. So when you need long-term care, it's because you cannot live independently without some support services. So your long-term care insurance will give you choices. You can get care at home, adult daycare, assisted living facility, or nursing home. Most people choose to stay home. 70% of the claims are for home care. And so in terms of home care, it will pay for care providers to come in and help out with bathing and dressing and managing medications and cooking and cleaning and doing the laundry, running your errands, helping you get to doctor's appointments, and it includes even things like home maintenance. So shoveling your driveway, mowing the lawn, because we need your home to be a safe place if you're living there, and if you have some health issues, it's most likely you're not able to do the home maintenance anymore. It'll also pay for things like a lift on the stairs, safety equipment in the bathroom like your grab bars. It will pay to have ramps built. It will also pay for the lifelines or the alert, systems if you've fallen and you can't get up, that sort of thing. So it's very comprehensive in the home care arena.
Now, if you have in-home care and a family member is providing the care, can you claim under the long-term care insurance policy?
Most long-term care insurance policies will not pay an immediate family member, primarily because there's too much of a risk for fraud. But there are some policies that give you the flexibility where they'll just pay you cash, and you can choose to use that cash however you want. So you could use it to pay a family member, but you're going to pay a little bit more for that policy that gives you the cash flexibility, but it is available.
What about agencies, the in-home care agencies? Does it have to be from a certified agency, or can you have someone that you know through another person who's there and getting paid privately?
Depends on the policy. It's important to read the fine print because many policies require that you use licensed or certified care providers, but there are some policies that allow you to use non-licensed care providers. So you could use a neighbor, you could use a friend, you could use your cleaning lady, and the policy would pay for that.
So the services are pretty broad. What about waiting periods? Is there a waiting period before your benefits start getting paid?
Elimination period is the term in the long-term care insurance industry for waiting period, or as we call it, a deductible. Most policies have a 90-day deductible. I always recommend that you get day one home care, recognizing that most care begins at home. With day one home care, you have no deductible for home care, no waiting period for home care. And then if you later transition into assisted living or a nursing home, those home care days would satisfy the 90-day deductible required for the facility.
Now, the policies have evolved over a number of years. I remember my parents got their policy. It was in, I think, the early 90s, and they got it through John Hancock. And I think John Hancock was one of the few insurance companies that offered long-term care insurance.
They still are.
They still are. I mean, there's Genworth and a number of other companies. Now, do you underwrite for do they underwrite all your the policies that you provide?
I underwrite all the major providers. There used to be over 100 companies selling long-term care insurance. Now we're down to less than 20, although some others are coming back in, so it's a constantly changing. I would say the top two providers are Genworth and John Hancock.
Now, what's the reason why why it's been pared down from over 100 down to 20?
I think that the market has not developed to the extent that the industry thought it should or would. People don't usually buy long-term care insurance until they've had a personal experience where they've been, taking care of a family member, or they've seen a family member that went into a nursing home and really spent down a lot of assets. So as the baby boomers age, I think you're going to see a lot more people buying long-term care insurance because people didn't used to live as long as they're living today. So it wasn't as big an issue. And families were larger, so families took care of each other. Now they're spread out all over the country. The women are working. There aren't people that are available to be care providers for their parents when they get old.
Now, is long-term care insurance always, since it's when insurance companies started first to provide these policies, was it just for nursing home, and then it evolved to in-home care, assisted living, and independent living?
Exactly, yes. Initially, it was nursing home only insurance, and today only 17% of the claims are for nursing homes. So we've come a long way, needless to say. But you got that right, exactly that order. First it was nursing home, then they added the home care, then they added assisted living and adult daycare also. In the independent living, which is what I call the continuing care retirement community, the CCRC, the long-term care insurance won't pay if you're living independently because you don't need care, theoretically. in order to use your policy, you have to satisfy the eligibility requirements. And this is standard in the industry for all the companies.
And what are the eligibility requirements?
When you need help with 2 out of your 6 activities of daily living, so you need physical support with bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, continence, or eating. So if you need help with 2 of those, or you have the memory issues, so that's your Alzheimer's, dementia, senility, and the memory issues is the #1 cause of claims.
And who determines that? Does a nurse go to the house and examine, or do they go to the doctor and the
Both.
doctor signs off?
Your doctor is the one that fills out the claims paperwork, but they also send out a nurse to do an assessment to evaluate what your needs are so they can make recommendations in terms of home care. If you move into a facility, then they don't need to send out an assessor. They'll just have your doctor fill out the paperwork.
And what is the common turnaround from the time that you apply for a policy and the time that you get approved or not approved for a policy?
The underwriting process for long-term care insurance probably averages 2 months.
And how do they determine, again, based on the condition of your health at the time that you applied, but I'm trying to get to is, do they determine it from just the past, right prior to? Can they go all the way back and say you've improved since then? You had an ailment 15 years ago, and know it's no longer existing, and you have clear health since then. Does that become a piece of information that is used?
Depending on the condition. If you had a stroke and fully recovered, there's probably only one company that will look at you. But if you had a heart attack and you've recovered and you've stabilized your health, yes, you can get long-term care insurance. If you've had a cancer and you've recovered, yes, you can get long-term care insurance. So there's a lot of conditions that you can become insurable as soon as you're stable.
And I would assume the premium is higher if you have a past condition
Yes.
under those circumstances.
Yes.
And how much would that vary?
It depends on the company. It could be only 10%, or it could be as much as 50%. So, and like I say, if you've recovered and you're really stable, you're probably only going to have that 10% difference.
Who initiates getting the policy? Is it a family member? Is it the elder themselves? What's your experience with that?
So when people buy long-term care insurance, and I talk to them, they'll always say to me something to the extent, we've been thinking about this for a few years. So I would say most of the people that come to me to buy long-term care insurance, they looked online and they got their information there, or they got a mailing, and that sort of triggered them sending back a card to an organization saying, yes, it's time for us to start looking at this. 70% of the claims are for women. So women are probably more likely to be interested in long-term care insurance because ultimately they become the care providers.
Because they live longer, or?
Yes. So, yes. The women often take care of their men, and the men maybe don't need as much care because the spouse is a care provider. Long-term care becomes a big issue when there's only one of you left. And now you're going to be looking to another generation to become care providers. So that's the story.
And what are the odds that you will use a policy?
Good question. So here's some statistics. 50% of policyholders will use their policy for less than a year. So that means either they die and they never used it, or they use it for less than 12 months, maybe 6 months, 8 months, maybe they had a cancer, whatever. But the other 50%, the average claim is 3.9 years. So that's almost 4 years. So you sort of look at every couple and you say, well, we don't know which one it'll be, but one of you will probably use this policy for an extended period of time.
That's interesting. So is that increased over time now because of the fact that women are living longer?
I think it sort of relates to that whole memory issues thing. People aren't dying of cancer anymore. People aren't dying of heart disease anymore. We're able to have intervention and live much longer lives. And then when you get over the age of 80, then you start to develop the memory issues. So we figured out how to fix all the physical parts. We haven't unlocked the brain yet.
So just getting back to your business, how do people generally go to you, or can they go to their general insurance agent who provides life insurance, or a financial advisor, an attorney? If they go see their attorney, does the attorney then bring you in? There's a financial advisor who can't provide the policy or doesn't have enough experience in providing them. They'll come to you. Is that how you basically would get your...
I work with a lot of financial advisors and estate planning attorneys and other insurance organizations like a P&C insurance agency. Because long-term care insurance has changed so much over the years, and it's constantly changing. Companies are rolling out new products all the time. It's really hard to stay on top of it unless you're a specialist. And the thing about long-term care insurance is you want to get it right the first time. Because when you apply, you lock in on your age and your rate at application. If you were to buy another policy 5 years from now, that same policy would cost you twice as much. So that's why it's important to make sure that you're talking to a specialist that understands what you're looking for. You know, maybe you are originally from a foreign country and you want to have a policy that will allow you to return to, you know, Italy, where you're initially from when you get old. You need a specific policy because not all of the policies have international coverage.
How many specialists are out there that do the same thing that you do?
Not that many.
Not that many.
I would say in Massachusetts, maybe there's 40.
40
Yeah.
statewide.
Yeah, that really specialize in it, and that's all they do, that only do long-term care insurance.
Now, is there some sort of certification that you can
Yes,
you can get? Or?
like all insurance, there's a lot of training that's required. First, you have to get licensed, then you have to get appointed. Continuing ed, to initially sell long-term care insurance, you have to have 8 hours of continuing ed certification to sell it at all. And then every 2 years, you have to have 4 hours of additional. This is all just long-term care insurance. In addition to that, you have to have 45 hours. Well, actually, that can factor into your 45 hours every 3 years of continuing education.
Now, you mentioned before that that there are pretty much 20 insurance companies who provide long-term care insurance. Do you underwrite for every one of those companies?
I don't underwrite for every single one of them, but I have the access to be able to underwrite all the products. So I have probably 10 or 15 companies that I could do. Maybe there's 5 or 6 other ones that I don't do myself, but if I had someone that policy made the most sense for them, I would work with a colleague to get them that coverage.
Let's just go over costs, because I think that's a big issue for people, whether they can afford to pay for a long-term care insurance policy. Give us a general range, or for somebody who's, if they're qualified, is there number 1 qualification, number 2, number 3?
Okay, so good question. So it really depends on your age when you buy your policy, and it also depends on your health issues, because if you have really good health, then your price is going to be much lower. Also, if you have a spouse, you can get a spousal discount that ranges between 30% and 40% depending on the company. So how much does long-term care insurance cost? It can be anywhere from $100 a month to $500 a month, depending on the amount of coverage you buy. So, for example, you can buy a policy that will give you $50 a day to pay for care, or you can get a policy that will pay for $400 a day to pay for care. A $400 a day policy is going to be more on the $500 per month end of the scale. So most people don't fully insure. They don't buy that $400 a day policy just because they don't want to spend that much on insurance. And that's sort of part of the workings of when we get together and talk about coverage. It's finding the right amount of coverage that's going to fit your budget, even when you retire, and it's going to give you some peace of mind of knowing that you're going to have an incredible foundation to pay for care where you choose, so that you can really, not have to end up in a nursing home.
I know that a lot, at least in my experience, my parents not only using it for what it's used for, to get care, to pay for the care, but they're also using it as a financial asset, meaning they get it to protect their assets, so they don't have to dig deep into their monies that they've saved and use the policy to take care of that. Is that pretty commonplace?
Yes. The number 1 reason why people buy long-term care insurance, they don't want to put the burden on their kids to be care provider. Number 2, protect assets. And along those lines, nursing homes in the greater Boston area range from $9,000 to $12,000 a month. I actually spoke to somebody this week that said, no, Susie, they're $14,000 to $15,000 a month. So you can easily spend $150,000 a year in a nursing home.
Right.
Assisted living, half that amount. But home care, as you well know, if you need round-the-clock home care, you could be spending $500 a day for round-the-clock home care. So that could be anywhere from $18,000 to $20,000 a month. You're up over $200,000 a year. So yes, absolutely. If you have long-term care insurance, you're going to have a lot more choices. If you're tapping into only savings and investments, and when people get old, they worry about running out of money, and they don't know how much longer they're going to live. Am I going to need long-term care for a year and then die? Am I going to need long-term care for 4 years and then die? And so starting to spend down that retirement portfolio is a very scary proposition for people when they're starting to develop those health issues.
Now, policies, what the coverage that you get under a policy, is it a la carte? You can pick and choose
Yes.
what you want, and
Yes.
how people typically.
There's
what
various
what do they
options.
typically
So a
choose?
typical policy, let's say somebody buys a policy that will give you $5,000 a month to pay for care. Okay, if assisted living facilities range 4 to 6, 4 to 8,000, so that's going to pay majority of the cost in assisted living. If you are getting care at home, you're probably only going to get maybe 6 or 8 hours of care at home for that amount of money. But the most important part of long-term care insurance is inflation protection. And this is allowing your policy to grow every year. And you can have a choice. There's several choices, but most people will choose either 3% compounding or 5% compounding. And so let's just use 5% for this example. That means that your $5,000 a month benefit next year will be $5,250 a month. And the year after, it'll be $5,550. And in 15 years, it'll double. It'll be $10,000 a month to pay for care. And in 30 years, it'll be $20,000 a month to pay for care. And that's why it's so important to buy it when you're young, because the compounding starts, so that you're going to always, keep up with the increasing costs of health care, but your premium is level. So that's the most important part of buying long-term care insurance, is that inflation protection.
And as the policy is in existence, can you add to it or subtract from the coverage?
You can reduce your coverage at any time. It's a consumer protection, because if you can't afford it, we don't want you to have to cancel it. You cannot increase your coverage at any time. But remember, it's automatically growing with your inflation protection.
No, I'm talking about the coverage.
But you cannot add to your coverage in the future unless you bought a second policy at your newly attained age and your newly attained health issues. And so that's what I always recommend to people: buy as much as you can afford today. It'll never be cheaper. If it becomes unaffordable as you go on a fixed income, then you could always reduce your coverage.
So what's the typical policy? Do people just buy policies just to cover them from nursing home, or do they now pay the additional premium to be covered in-home and assisted living?
All policies today really are comprehensive. They all include
They
home
do.
care, adult daycare, assisted living, and nursing home. Yeah. It's not very often. I mean, you could buy a policy that has facilities only, but most people get the comprehensive coverage.
And are the rates guaranteed?
No long-term care insurance rates are guaranteed. Some companies have 5-year rate guarantees, and that's why it's important to look carefully at the company you're buying it from. You want to make sure you're with a company that's sort of committed to the industry, that's going to be there for the long haul, because as long as the company continues to sell long-term care insurance, they're more likely, to be able to charge higher prices on new policies rather than existing policyholders. If you have a company that doesn't seem as committed to the industry or doesn't have a big book of business, you might be more likely to have rate increases with a company like that.
Are there any situations where the insurance company could deny coverage?
If you don't meet the eligibility requirements of the 2 out of 6 activities of daily living or the memory issues, but other than that, no. And with long-term care insurance, once you're approved, it's guaranteed renewable. So no matter how your health changes, once you've been approved, you will have your policy forever.
And do men and women pay the same rates on long-term care insurance?
They do today, but that is changing. The
That is
rates
changing.
for long-term care insurance are unisex now, but several companies are rolling out new rates this year, in 2013, where women are going to be charged more. Because 70% of the claims are for women, So that's going to be reflected in the new pricing. So if there's any women that you know that are thinking about long-term care insurance, the fire sale is on right now. The time to buy is now, because once you apply, you lock in on that rate, and that's still going to be a unisex rate probably for about 4 more months.
Interesting. Well, is there anything else you want to add to talk about so the audience is educated on long-term care insurance that we haven't covered today?
Not that I can think of. I mean, I'll say it one more time: buy long-term care insurance when you're young and healthy. and here is an interesting point: the cancellation rate for long-term care insurance is only 1%. So people that buy their policies, the older they get, the more they value the coverage, because as you get older, you see things happen to friends or relatives, and you might not be able to qualify anymore to buy a policy if you've developed a health issue. So unfortunately, many people come to us after they've already got a diagnosis. 1 out of 3 people that I speak to are unable to qualify to apply because they waited too long.
So are you finding more and more people coming in who are younger than
Yes.
over the last few years?
Yes, the average age people buy now is in their 50s. It used to be in their 60s, so it's coming down.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to say that my wife has it. I'm happy to say that I was able to get it through another carrier.
Yeah.
Now that's one last question. If you don't is there any circumstances where you can pay extra to get a policy if you don't qualify?
There are other solutions. Right now we're working on something called critical illness care. It's a product that's available in other states, and we're trying to get it approved in Massachusetts too, for people that might not be able to get a standard long-term care insurance policy. So it's coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Susan. We're going
My
to wrap
pleasure.
up for Susie. That's my sister's name, so I should be used to saying that, Susie. I never usually call her Susan. So I think you provided a lot of information. Hopefully, if you have any questions, you will send me an email to alwaysthere@westboroughTV.org. I'm Michael Wilsker. Thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in our next show.